Hi, I'm Peter Ritchie and welcome to Kayak Fishing Unboxed. Today I want to talk about PFDs. I want to talk about the difference between the two types, the solid or the rigid PFD and the inflatable type. Now, I've been kayak fishing for 8 years now and this was my first PFD. Haven't used it for 6 years and there's a few reasons why. This is what I use now. So I'm not going to talk about particular brands or styles. It's basically inflatable versus solid. A couple of reasons why I don't like these to start with. One, there's a device that inflates it. So you have to rely on the mechanics working properly. You have to have the PFD service or the CO2 canister service every couple of years. You have to make sure it's working properly. So there's already a problem is if you get a bit busy or you forget about it or you're not sure when it was done last, it may actually not be in service. So there's a mechanical problem with these to start with. The second thing is that once they're inflated, they're particularly hard to climb back into a kayak wearing. And you can imagine it's a big, bulky, inflated bit in front of you that you're trying to slide over the side of the kayak and get back into it. So here's a question for anyone who's using these. How do you manually deflate them and manually inflate them? Because the only way you're going to get back into a kayak is if you can let the air out without stabbing it, and then once you're back in the kayak, you need to be actually to inflate it again in case you have another emergency. So you've got to think about that. And I bet there aren't many people who have actually opened the pouch, had a look at the unit, and actually seen how you can manually inflate it and deflate it. And you can see this canister is actually quite rusty. Now this is an old one, like I said, haven't worn it for 6 years. Something very scary though. When I first bought this, I used it for a couple of years, maybe 12 months, and thought I'd better check the canisters and just do some routine maintenance. There wasn't a canister in there. Obviously I was really perturbed about this and quite upset because for 12 months I've been wearing this thinking I was safe and I wasn't. Did have a chat with the person who sold it to me. It's a retail store, not around here. I went for this style originally because I used it in my boat and my plane, so it suited the purpose. But when I discovered it didn't have a canister, I was shocked. So make sure it's got a canister in it to start with and actually learn how to inflate it and deflate it manually. Because if you pop the canister once and you're still in the trouble and it goes down, you're still going to have to keep blowing it up. Now, and that's another reason why I don't like them, because there's a rubber bladder in here. Now you're in a fishing environment with sharp fishing hooks, lures, knives and things like that. You don't need much of pressure to put a hole through the rubber bladder. And because it's inflating under pressure, it might only be a small pinprick to start with, but with the pressure from the CO2 canister inflating it, could actually tear it and make it completely unusable. So certainly keep that in mind too, because if you're fishing and you're playing with fish hooks and you've got fish jumping around, even snapper with their little spikes, they get in your fingers, they can certainly penetrate the rubber membrane. So keep that in mind as well about why this isn't particularly safe. Now, yes, they are safe and it's better than having nothing. Don't get me wrong, I understand they're comfortable. But here's another point to consider. And you might think, well, I'm only fishing in a quiet little lake somewhere or in a bit of a slow-moving river and I can swim to shore anyway. The risk with this style, again, is if you fall out of your kayak and if you happen to be standing up or even sitting down the kayak and it tips over or you run into a sunken tree you're not aware of and you hit your head and you fall out, you're unconscious in the water, there's no one there to inflate it for you. So it might be a really benign piece of water you're fishing in, but it could be one of those unfortunate accidents where you're just not quite sure, you hit something, you tip out, smack your head, unconscious, don't have to be unconscious for long, face down the water before you drown. There are PFDs with Auto Inflaters. Again, a great device, but we're in a kayak. There's every chance it's going to get wet, and if it gets wet, it might auto-inflate in the most inappropriate time and cause you issues, as well as cost you another canister. So for my peace of mind, I would stay away from one of these types in a kayak. I understand they're cheaper, they're comfortable perhaps, but there's so much inherent risk with them, I wouldn't use one anymore. And yes I did, now I don't. I love the solid PFD, and the reason is, well, one, if I fall out of a kayak, I'm going to float. Straight up, not going to sink. So even if I have a head injury, and perhaps I drown, they'll recover my body far faster than if I'm lying on the bottom dead somewhere. If nothing else, this will keep you afloat even if you're unconscious. The other reason I like this is if you happen to get separated from your kayak And that can happen if you're out in the ocean, there's a strong wind blowing, there's a current somewhere. You might fall out of your kayak while it's at anchor in Western Port. There's 3 or 4 knots current blowing downwind. You can't swim back against the current, but your kayak's stuck on the anchor. You're going away. There's nothing this can do to help rescue you, other than keep you afloat perhaps if you're conscious. My kayak, and I use this set up in the bays, wherever I go fishing, this is my standard rig. Marine radio. Can't go anywhere without one. PLB. Can't use it offshore legally. You still use it offshore legally. The reason though you can't use them offshore legally, but you can in EPIRB, is because the MSV, Maritime Safety Victoria, have done some research, and the average person can only hold one of these above their head for 10 to 15 minutes. The aerial has to be out of the water for this to work. So mounting it on your shoulder, when you pop the aerial, potentially the aerial will stay out of the water and it's a lot safer. So I know the regulations are being reviewed in 2022 about carrying a PLB instead of an EPIRB for kayakers. There's some good news on that. I've just got a homemade strap. You can actually just use big zip ties and zip tie through the back of the patch straight to the strap on the PFD and keep your EPIRB there safe, ready to use. And if you are in the water, the EPIRB is going to be out of the water, the aerial is going to be in the air, and there's more chance of being rescued. So PLB every trip, and it might be because you have a medical condition and you can't pedal back in, you can't paddle back in, your radio's gone flat, you can't get to your phone, you've still got a rescue system. In the other pocket, I carry waterproof torch. Check it every now and again, make sure it works. Again, you might not plan to be fishing at night time, but life happens, you might get stuck out there. Better to have a torch of some description than nothing at all. If I go offshore, this is mandatory, but even in the bay or Eildon, I've been caught in fog, can't see the land, the GPS might work, I always take a compass with me as well. All these things are carried with me, so if I get separated from the kayak at any point in time, and I'm in the water, more chance of survival. The only thing I don't have on here is my phone, but I keep my phone and my car keys in a separate waterproof container in the back of my chair on my kayak. I like to separate some safety equipment from the other, just in case something goes wrong, and there's a point of how much can I actually carry. Marine radio, waterproof, far better means of communication on the water than a mobile phone is anyway, so that's the number one tool to use. Okay, well hopefully that makes a bit of sense to you. Hopefully you get a little bit of information out of this and it may change your selection as to what PFD you wear in the water. If you've got any questions, obviously give me a call or send me an email or contact me via YouTube or Facebook. This is Peter Ritchie and thank you for watching Kayak Fishing Unboxed.